My name is Clara Sinclair, and I never expected to hear my husband's name whispered with such venom at a party I was attending. But there I was, standing on the patio of Gregory's lavish mansion, when Vivian's voice sliced through the evening air like a poisoned blade. Elliot will always come back to me. Clara's just a placeholder. I froze, my champagne flute halfway to my lips. The cool night breeze suddenly felt icy against my skin as I strained to hear more. "Oh, come on, Vivian," a man's voice replied, thick with skepticism. "They've been married for 3 years now. I think it's time to let it go." Vivian's laugh was sharp and brittle. "You clearly don't know Elliot like I do. He's just playing house with Little Miss Accountant. When he's ready for the real thing, he'll be back." I'd had enough. Squaring my shoulders, I stepped around the corner, coming face to face with Vivian and her companion. "Is that so?" I said, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling in my chest. Vivian's perfect features arranged themselves into a mask of surprise. "Clara, I didn't see you there. We were just catching up on old times." "I'm sure you were," I replied coolly. "Tell me, Vivian, do you often discuss your ex-boyfriend's marriages at parties? Or am I just special?" The man beside her, I recognized him as one of Gregory's business associates, looked uncomfortable. "I think I hear someone calling me," he muttered, beating a hasty retreat. Vivian's smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. "Oh, Clara, you're so sensitive. I was just reminiscing about the good old days. Surely you're not threatened by a few harmless memories." Before I could respond, I felt a warm hand on my lower back. "There you are, sweetheart," Elliot said, pressing a kiss to my cheek. "I've been looking everywhere for you." His eyes flickered to Vivian, and I saw a flash of something surprise, discomfort, cross his face. "Vivian," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight." "Elliot," Vivian's voice dripped with honey. "What a lovely surprise. I was just telling Clara here about some of our adventures back in college. Remember that weekend in Cabo?" I felt Elliot stiffen beside me. "That was a long time ago, Viv," he said firmly. "Ancient history." "Of course," Vivian purred. "But you know what they say, history has a way of repeating itself." I'd had enough. "Well, it's been delightful catching up," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "But I'm afraid we have other guests to greet. Enjoy the party, Vivian." As we walked away, I could feel Vivian's eyes boring into my back. Elliot squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded, forcing a smile. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? But as we made our way through the crowded party, exchanging pleasantries with acquaintances and business associates, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled in my stomach. Vivian's words echoed in my mind, along with the memory of Elliot's reaction. It was subtle, but I knew my husband. There had been a moment, just a flicker, of something more than simple discomfort at seeing an ex. As the night wore on, I found myself watching Elliot more closely. The way he laughed a little too loudly at Gregory's jokes. The extra glass of scotch he knocked back when he thought I wasn't looking. And then, just as we were preparing to leave, I saw it, a quick, furtive glance across the room to where Vivian stood, holding court with a group of admirers. It was nothing, I told myself. A coincidence. Paranoia brought on by too much champagne and Vivian's poisonous words. But as we drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That this party, this chance encounter, was the beginning of something I wasn't prepared for. Little did I know just how right I was. The weeks following Gregory's party were a blur of social engagements and business dinners. Everywhere we turned, Vivian seemed to materialize, her presence a constant reminder of that night on the patio. I tried to shake off my unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. "Clara, darling." Vivian's voice rang out across the crowded restaurant. Elliot and I were having dinner with some of his business associates when she sauntered over, all smiles and sparkling eyes. What a delightful coincidence. I doubted it was a coincidence at all. "Vivian," I replied, forcing a smile. "How unexpected." Elliot shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Viv, we're in the middle of a business dinner." Oh, don't let me interrupt, she purred, laying a hand on Elliot's shoulder. I just wanted to say hello to my favorite power couple. As she chatted with the group, I watched Elliot's face. He was smiling, but there was tension around his eyes. When Vivian finally sashayed away, I couldn't help but notice how his gaze lingered on her retreating form. She certainly knows how to make an entrance. One of Elliot's associates chuckled. That's our Vivian, Elliot replied, his tone light, but his eyes avoiding mine. The next day, I met Margot for coffee, desperate for a sympathetic ear. I don't know, Margot. I sighed, stirring my latte absently. Am I overreacting? Elliot says I'm being paranoid, but… Margot's eyes narrowed. But what? Has something else happened? I hesitated, then plunged ahead. Vivian's everywhere lately. At parties, restaurants, even the gym. And Elliot, he's different when she's around. Distracted. Tense. Have you talked to him about it? I've tried, I admitted. But he just brushes it off, says it's all in my head. Margot reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Trust your instincts, Clara. You're too smart to ignore them. Her words echoed in my mind that evening as I sorted through the laundry. As I shook out Elliot's suit jacket, a small piece of paper fluttered to the floor. Curious, I picked it up. My heart stopped as I read the hastily scrawled words. Meet me at the usual place. 8 p.m.
V.
The room spun. I sank onto the bed, the note clutched in my trembling hand. This couldn't be happening. There had to be an explanation. I heard the front door open. Elliot's familiar footsteps in the hallway. Clara, he called out. You home? I quickly stuffed the note in my pocket, my mind racing. In here, I managed to reply, my voice surprisingly steady. Elliot appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. Everything okay? You look pale. I stood up, forcing a smile. Just tired. Long day at work. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my explanation. As he moved to hang up his jacket, I watched him closely, searching for any sign of guilt or deception. But his face was an unreadable mask. I have to work late tomorrow, he said casually, not meeting my eyes. Big project due. My stomach clenched. Tomorrow was Thursday. The note had said 8 p.m. Oh. I kept my voice light. Anything I can help with? He shook his head quickly.
No.
Just boring paperwork. You'd hate it. I nodded, my mind whirling. What was I going to do? Confront him? Follow him? The thought of my husband sneaking around with Vivian made me feel physically ill. As we got ready for bed that night, the silence between us felt oppressive. Elliot kissed me goodnight, but it felt perfunctory, distant. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the note burning a hole in my pocket and my heart. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Because one thing was certain, this unseen rivalry with Vivian was no longer just in my head. It was very, very real. The next evening, I paced our living room, my nerves frayed to breaking point. Elliot had left for his late night at the office an hour ago, his kiss on my cheek feeling like a brand of betrayal. The note burned in my pocket, a constant reminder of the confrontation to come. At 7:45, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the address I'd found in Elliot's contact list for Vivian's new gallery. My hands shook as I parked across the street, watching the entrance intently. At 7:58, a familiar car pulled up. My heart sank as I watched Elliot step out, straightening his tie before entering the building. I waited 5 excruciating minutes before following. The gallery was dimly lit, soft music playing in the background. I heard voices coming from a back room and crept closer, my heart pounding. Elliot, darling, I'm so glad you could make it. Vivian's sultry voice drifted out. Vivian, we need to talk about this. It can't go on, Elliot replied, his tone strained. I couldn't take it anymore. I burst into the room, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. What exactly can't go on, Elliot? They both whirled to face me, shock evident on their faces. Elliot paled. Clara, what are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, I spat. Funny place for a business meeting, don't you think? Vivian recovered first, a smirk playing on her lips. Oh, Clara, how embarrassing for you. Did you really follow your husband here like some jealous schoolgirl? I ignored her, focusing on Elliot. I found your note. Meet me at the usual place. How long has this been going on? Elliot's face crumpled. Clara, it's not what you think. I can explain dash. Then explain. I shouted, tears threatening to spill. Explain why you've been lying to me, sneaking around with her. It's business, Clara, he pleaded. Vivian's father is a major investor in my company. I had to dash. Had to what? I interrupted. Meet his daughter in secret? Lie to your wife. Vivian laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. Oh, honey, you really don't understand how the business world works, do you? Sometimes, to seal a deal, you need a personal touch. I saw red. Before I knew what I was doing, my hand connected with Vivian's cheek, the slap echoing in the quiet gallery. Clara. Elliot grabbed my arm, pulling me back. Stop it. I wrenched away from him, my voice ice cold. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. Elliot's face was a mask of anguish. Please let me explain. Henry's investment is crucial for the company. I had to keep Vivian happy, but I swear, nothing happened between us. Nothing happened? I laughed bitterly. You've been lying to me for weeks, Elliot. Meeting her in secret. That's not nothing. Vivian rubbed her cheek, her eyes glittering with malice. Face it, Clara. You're out of your depth here. Elliot needs someone who understands his world, not some number-crunching nobody. I turned to leave, unable to bear another moment in that room. Elliot caught my arm again. Clara, wait.
Please.
I love you. This was all just business, I swear. I looked into his eyes, searching for the man I'd fallen in love with. But all I saw was a stranger. If this is your idea of business, Elliot, then I want no part of it. Or you. As I stormed out of the gallery, I heard Vivian's mocking laughter behind me. I told you she couldn't handle it, Elliot. Now, where were we? I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling. When I arrived, I noticed a sleek black car parked outside our house. A distinguished-looking older man stepped out as I approached. Mrs. Sinclair, he asked, his voice grave. I'm Henry Blackwood, Vivian's father. I think we need to talk. I stared at him, suddenly realizing that this night was far from over. The family divide had only just begun. The days following my confrontation with Elliot and Vivian were a blur of sleepless nights and tense silences. Elliot had come home that night, full of apologies and explanations, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. The conversation with Henry Blackwood still echoed in my mind, his warnings about his daughter's manipulative nature only adding to my confusion and hurt. I threw myself into work, desperate for a distraction. It was during a lunch break, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, that I first noticed something was off. A photo of Elliot at a charity gala popped up on my feed, but it wasn't the image that caught my attention. It was the caption. Elliot Sinclair looking dashing as always. Some men just can't be tied down, can they? Hashtag single and ready to mingle. My stomach churned as I realized the post was from Vivian's account. I scrolled further, finding more photos, more suggestive captions. Elliot at business dinners, Elliot at the gym, Elliot leaving his office late at night. Each image carefully curated to paint a picture of a man living a separate life from his wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Margot. Have you seen this? Call me ASAP. I met Margot at our favorite cafe an hour later, my hands shaking as I clutched my coffee. I don't understand, I said, fighting back tears. Why is she doing this? Margot's eyes flashed with anger. Because she's a manipulative bitch who can't stand to see you happy. She's trying to isolate you, Clara. Make you doubt everything. It's working, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Have you talked to Elliot about this? I shook my head. We've barely spoken since that night at the gallery. He keeps trying to explain, but I can't bear to hear it. Margot reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You need to confront this head-on, Clara. Both Vivian and Elliot. You can't let her win. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a notification. Another post from Vivian, this time a photo of her and Elliot at what looked like a business lunch. The caption made my blood run cold. Some partnerships are just meant to be. In business and in life. Hashtag soulmates. That's it, Margot said, her voice steely. We're putting an end to this right now. Before I could protest, she had grabbed my phone, furiously typing. I watched in a mix of horror and admiration as she commented on the post. Funny, I don't see Elliot's wedding ring in this photo. Must be an old picture, right? Because surely you wouldn't be stupid enough to post current photos implying a married man is single. That could be considered slander, couldn't it? Hashtag check your facts, hashtag lawyer up. Margot. I gasped. What are you doing? She handed my phone back, a satisfied smirk on her face, giving that snake a taste of her own medicine. Now it's your turn. What do you mean? I mean it's time to fight fire with fire. If Vivian wants to play dirty on social media, let's show her how it's done. For the next hour, Margot and I crafted a series of posts, photos of Elliot and me from happier times, our wedding day, romantic vacations. Each one tagged with pointed hashtags like hashtag happily married and hashtag true love. It felt petty, but also strangely empowering. As we were about to post the last photo, my phone rang. Elliot's name flashed on the screen. You need to answer it, Margot urged. I took a deep breath and swiped to accept the call. Hello. Clara. Elliot's voice was urgent. We need to talk.
Now.
Things are spiraling out of control. I could hear the panic in his voice, and despite everything, my heart ached for him. Okay, I said softly. I'm listening. As Elliot began to speak, I realized that this social media war was just the beginning. The real battle for my marriage and my dignity was about to begin. And I was finally ready to fight. The annual charity gala for the city's children's hospital loomed on my calendar, a glittering event I'd once looked forward to. Now, it felt like a minefield. Elliot had been called away on an urgent business trip, leaving me to face the wolves alone. As I stepped into the grand ballroom, a sea of familiar faces turned to me, their expressions a mix of curiosity and poorly concealed pity. I plastered on my best smile, determined not to let them see me falter. Champagne flute in hand, I navigated the crowd, exchanging pleasantries and deflecting not-so-subtle inquiries about Elliot's absence. Clara, darling. A booming voice cut through the chatter. I turned to see Henry Blackwood approaching, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. You look absolutely radiant tonight, Mr. Blackwood. I greeted him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. It's good to see you. He waved a hand dismissively. Please call me Henry. I was hoping we might have a chat. There are some business matters I'd like to discuss. Intrigued and slightly wary, I followed him to a quieter corner of the room. As we talked, I found myself unexpectedly charmed by Henry's wit and intelligence. He spoke passionately about his latest business ventures, asking for my opinion on financial matters with genuine interest. You know, Clara, he said, his eyes twinkling, I've always said Elliot was a lucky man. But I'm beginning to think I underestimated just how lucky. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. That's very kind of you to say, Henry. It's the truth. In fact, I have a proposition for you. He leaned in conspiratorially. I'm looking for a sharp mind to help oversee a new project. Someone with financial acumen and a fresh perspective. I think you might be just the person I'm looking for. My heart raced at the opportunity. I'm flattered, but wouldn't that be a conflict of interest? With your investment in Elliot's company. Henry's expression darkened slightly. To be frank, Clara, I'm beginning to have some concerns about that investment. But that's a conversation for another time. This project would be entirely separate, under my personal oversight. As we continued to discuss the details, I couldn't shake the feeling that this could be a turning point. A chance to prove myself beyond the shadow of my marriage and the drama with Vivian. Speak of the devil, I spotted Vivian across the room, her eyes narrowing as she took in the animated conversation between her father and me. She began to make her way towards us, but Henry noticed her approach and quickly steered me away. Let's continue this discussion somewhere more private, he suggested, guiding me towards the terrace. The cool night air was a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Henry produced a business card, pressing it into my hand. Think about my offer, Clara. I believe we could do great things together. As he turned to leave, he paused, his expression softening. And Clara, don't let the whispers and stares get to you. You're made of stronger stuff than that. I watched him disappear back into the crowd, my mind whirling with possibilities. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope, of purpose beyond the drama that had consumed my life. Returning to the ballroom, I found myself face to face with Vivian. Her smile was sharp as a knife's edge. Well, well, she purred. Cozying up to Daddy Dearest now, are we?
How?
Enterprising of you. I met her gaze steadily. You know, Vivian, I used to wonder what Elliot ever saw in you. Now I realize absolutely nothing of substance. Her eyes flashed with anger, but before she could retort, I continued, enjoy your games while you can, because I'm done playing. As I walked away, head held high, I could feel the weight of eyes on me. But this time, instead of shrinking under their scrutiny, I felt empowered. Henry's offer was more than just a business opportunity. It was a chance to reclaim my narrative, to show the world and myself what I was truly capable of. The game was changing, and for once, I felt like I might just have the winning hand. The weeks following Henry's job offer flew by in a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into my new role, relishing the challenge and the distraction it provided from my crumbling personal life. Elliot and I were barely speaking, our conversations reduced to terse exchanges about household logistics. As I delved deeper into Henry's business dealings, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Contracts that should have been slam dunks for Elliot's company were mysteriously falling through. Deals were being sabotaged at the 11th hour, always with a competing bid swooping in to save the day. It wasn't until I stumbled across an email chain buried deep in the company archives that the pieces finally clicked into place. My hands shook as I read the damning evidence. Vivian had been using her father's connections to undermine Elliot's business, all while playing the devoted friend and confidant. I printed out the emails, my mind racing. Should I confront Vivian? Go straight to Henry? As I debated my next move, my phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. We need to talk. Dinner tonight. My heart clenched. Despite everything, I still loved him. Okay, I replied. 8 p.m. at home. The hours crawled by. When Elliot finally walked through the door, the tension between us was palpable. He looked haggard, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something more vulnerable. Clara, he began, his voice hoarse. I owe you an explanation. About Vivian, about everything. I held up a hand, silencing him. Before you say anything, there's something you need to see. I handed him the stack of emails, watching his face as he read. His expression morphed from confusion to shock to anger. This can't be real, he muttered. Vivian wouldn't. She couldn't. She did, I said softly. And she's been playing us both for fools. Elliot sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I've been such an idiot. Clara, I swear, nothing happened between Vivian and me. She kept insisting on these meetings, saying they were crucial for maintaining her father's investment. I thought I was protecting our future, but I was just playing right into her hands. I sat beside him, close but not touching. Why didn't you tell me? He looked up, his eyes filled with remorse. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to worry you. God, Clara, I've made such a mess of things. For the first time in months, I felt the wall between us start to crumble. We both have, I admitted. But this changes everything. Elliot nodded, a spark of his old determination returning. We need to confront her. Show Henry what his daughter's been up to. It's not that simple, I cautioned. Henry's offered me a position in his company. If we're not careful, this could blow up in our faces. Elliot's eyes widened. You've been working for Henry? Clara, that's brilliant. We can use this to our advantage. As we talked late into the night, formulating a plan, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, Elliot and I were on the same side. The next morning, I called Henry's office. I need to schedule an urgent meeting, I told his secretary. It's about Vivian. An hour later, I sat across from Henry in his opulent office, the incriminating emails spread out between us. His face grew increasingly grim as I laid out the evidence of his daughter's betrayal. I had no idea, he said finally, his voice heavy with disappointment. Clara, I can't thank you enough for bringing this to my attention. But I have to ask, what do you want in return for this information? I met his gaze steadily. Justice, Henry. For Elliot, for your company, and for myself. Vivian needs to be held accountable. Henry nodded slowly. You're right, of course. But tread carefully, Clara. Vivian won't go down without a fight. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. Vivian just called. She wants to meet tonight to discuss the future of our partnership. What should I do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Tell her yes, I replied. It's time to end this once and for all. The annual Blackwood Industries Gala was in full swing, the ballroom a glittering sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my heart pounding beneath my sleek black dress. Elliot was by my side, his hand resting protectively on the small of my back. Are you sure about this? He murmured, his eyes scanning the room for Vivian. I nodded, steeling myself. It's now or never. As if on cue, Vivian appeared, resplendent in a crimson gown that clung to her curves. Her eyes narrowed as she spotted us, but her lips curved into a practiced smile as she sauntered over. Elliot, darling, she purred, pointedly ignoring me. I was beginning to think you'd stood me up. Elliot's grip on my waist tightened. Vivian, we need to talk. Privately. She arched an eyebrow, her gaze flicking dismissively to me. Of course. Shall we use Daddy's office? As we followed her through the crowd, I caught Henry's eye across the room. He gave me a subtle nod, and I felt a surge of resolve. This ends tonight. Vivian closed the office door behind us, her facade dropping as soon as we were alone. All right, what's this about? I hope you're not here to bore me with more excuses about why our deal fell through. Elliot's jaw clenched. No excuses, Vivian. We know what you've been doing. Her laugh was sharp and brittle. And what exactly is it you think I've been doing? I stepped forward, pulling out the folder of evidence I'd been carrying. Sabotaging Elliot's business deals. Using your father's connections to undermine contracts. Manipulating both of us for your own gain. Vivian's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before her mask of cool indifference slipped back into place. That's quite an accusation, Clara. I hope you have proof to back it up. Oh, we do, Elliot said, his voice hard. Every email, every doctor contract, every backroom deal. It's all here. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in Vivian's eyes. But it was quickly replaced by a look of cold calculation. So what? You think you can just waltz in here and threaten me? In my father's company. Your father already knows, I said quietly. The color drained from Vivian's face. You're bluffing. As if on cue, the office door opened, and Henry stepped in. The look on his face was one of profound disappointment. I'm afraid they're not, Vivian. Vivian's composure cracked. Daddy, I can explain Dash. Henry held up a hand, silencing her. I've seen the evidence, Vivian. There's nothing to explain. You don't understand, Vivian pleaded, her voice rising. I did it for us, for the company. Elliot's business was a threat, Dash. A threat. Henry's voice was sharp. The only threat here is you, Vivian. To this family's reputation, to the integrity of our business. Vivian's eyes darted wildly between us, like a cornered animal. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. And that makes this betrayal all the more painful, Henry said, his voice heavy with regret. As of this moment, you are no longer a part of Blackwood Industries. Your trust fund will be frozen, your position terminated. Vivian's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. I'll fight you. All of you. I'm afraid you'll find that quite difficult, I interjected, my voice steady. Given that all of your recent activities are now a matter of legal record. The fight seemed to drain out of Vivian all at once. She slumped against the desk, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. Henry's expression softened slightly. That, Vivian, is entirely up to you. But it won't be here, and it won't be with my money or influence to protect you." As Henry led a shell-shocked Vivian from the room, I felt Elliot's arms encircle me from behind. "It's over," he murmured into my hair. I turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze. "No," I said softly. "It's just beginning." As we rejoined the gala, the weight of the past months finally lifting, I realized that this victory wasn't just about exposing Vivian or saving Elliot's business. It was about reclaiming our lives, our relationship, and our future together. 6 months after the gala that changed everything, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress. The Woman of the Year award ceremony was tonight, and my nerves were on edge. "You look stunning," Elliot said, appearing behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. I leaned into his embrace, marveling at how far we'd come. The months following Vivian's downfall had been challenging, but they'd also been transformative. We'd attended couples therapy, rebuilding our trust and communication one session at a time. Elliot had thrown himself into revitalizing his business, while I'd taken on a permanent role at Blackwood Industries, working closely with Henry to implement new ethical guidelines. "Ready to go?" Elliot asked, offering his arm. As we entered the grand ballroom, I was struck by how different it felt from that fateful night 6 months ago. The air was charged with positivity and celebration, not tension and deceit. Henry approached us, beaming. "Clara, Elliot. So good to see you both." We chatted easily, the awkwardness of our past entanglements long gone. Henry had become not just a mentor, but a friend. "Clara," he said, his tone growing serious. "I wanted to thank you again. What you did, it wasn't just about exposing Vivian. It was a wake-up call for me, for the whole company. We're better for it." I squeezed his arm. "Thank you, Henry. That means more than you know." As the ceremony began, I felt Elliot's hand slip into mine. The presenter took the stage, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "This year's Woman of the Year award goes to someone who exemplifies integrity, resilience, and leadership. Someone who, in the face of personal and professional challenges, chose to take the high road. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating Clara Sinclair." The room erupted in applause. In a daze, I made my way to the stage, accepting the award with shaking hands. "Thank you," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "This past year has taught me so much about strength, about forgiveness, and about the power of truth." As I spoke, my eyes found Elliot in the crowd. His face shone with pride and love. We all face moments that test us, that make us question everything we thought we knew. But it's in those moments that we discover who we truly are. I thought of Vivian, last I'd heard working at a small nonprofit, slowly rebuilding her life away from the glitz and manipulation of her past. This award isn't just for me. It's for everyone who's ever had to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. It's for those who choose love and honesty over ego and deceit. As I concluded my speech to thunderous applause, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The drama, the pain, the uncertainty, it was all behind us now. Later that night, Elliot and I stood on our balcony, the city lights twinkling below. I leaned against him, the award sitting on the table beside us. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured, his arms tightening around me. "I'm proud of us," I replied. We could have let all of this tear us apart. Instead, it made us stronger. Elliot turned me to face him, his eyes serious. "Clara, I know we've been through hell and back, but I want you to know, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're not just my wife, you're my partner, my best friend, my rock." Tears pricked my eyes as he continued. "I fall in love with you more every day. And I promise, from this day forward, no more secrets, no more doubts. Just us, facing whatever comes next together." As we sealed his words with a kiss, I felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but we'd weathered the storm. We'd emerged not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever. The drama with Vivian, the betrayals and doubts, they were chapters in our story, but they didn't define us. What defined us was this moment, and all the moments to come. A future built on trust, respect, and an unshakable bond. As we turned to go inside, hand in hand, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. And that was the